So a while back I reviewed an animated movie called Away, made entirely by one guy. And I said I'd like to see more similar things being done too. Animated movies done by small groups of people because the technology to do that is available now. And based on the credits on IMDb, I thought this would be something similar. But after digging into it, it still had a sizable crew working on it. This is not a micro-budget project or anything like that. But it is also definitely not your average big budget animation either. It's very much on the smaller side of things, and yeah, I was still curious to see what they'd come up with. I like to take risks like this from time to time and dip my toe into slightly more obscure territory. However, what I didn't realize going into this was that this was apparently originally a TV show. And I guess it's just 4 episodes cobbled together into a feature-length film. Which in hindsight makes a lot of sense, since it was divided into chapters. Speaking of which, when a new episode started there was this title card. And I really don't know why, but I loved those. Every time it came on screen, it just put a smile on my face. It was probably my single favorite thing about the whole movie, and I genuinely don't know why. But I loved it. Now with that being said, I didn't exactly love the rest of this. Primarily because of the story, which starts off rather tragically and follows this caveman, living in prehistoric times with all sorts of dangerous prehistoric beasts roaming the earth. And each episode is just basically another small adventure or scenario. And one of the biggest issues for me personally was that there wasn't usually much of an arc to it. Now there is definitely some sort of arc. Each episode is a separate little story. So now that I think about it, the bigger issue is probably that there's no bigger arc. No real running narrative, no sort of real through line that would tie it all together. These very much felt like separate stories, which also means there wasn't any real conclusion to it. There's no bigger story and not much actual depth to the movie as a whole. Which, considering the setup in the first episode, I figured there would be. And I was waiting for some sort of satisfying conclusion that would tie it all together and wrap it up neatly. But that never happened, and now that I know it's a TV show that actually has more episodes to it, that makes sense. What doesn't necessarily make a whole lot of sense is putting this movie together. Because it just ends abruptly when the last episode ends, and that's that. So yeah, had I known what this really was, I would have probably skipped it. However, I don't think it's terrible. I think each episode is fine for what it is. And I really enjoyed the art style and the animation, and I thought the score and the sound design was really effective. Because this doesn't have any dialogue, but that didn't turn out to be a big problem at all. And I will say that I was fairly entertained for the most part, and didn't really have that many issues with this. But the issue I did have was a big one. This doesn't really feel like an actual cohesive movie. Exactly because of the reasons I described before, and I wish I knew what it was before going into it. However, does that mean I wouldn't recommend it? I mean, if it sounds interesting to you, maybe give it a peek. Because at this point you should at least know what you're getting into. But to a general audience I wouldn't say this is worth the time, so maybe skip it or don't. After all, I'm not your dad. But hey, what are your thoughts on this? Have you seen it? Did you like it? Let me know. And if you enjoyed the video, maybe give it a thumbs up or sub to the channel, because that would be fantastic. And if you'd like, you can also support me on Patreon or PayPal through links in the description. And as always, I appreciate you and thanks for watching.